it's me again. So I'm going to continue the video where it left off. I went, grocery shopping with my parents, and it was fun. I really do enjoy going grocery shopping. So I think that it was kind of like a good boost of my spirits because I've been, as I mentioned in the other video, being really physically weak. Like if I stand up for too long, I get a little dizzy. If I am, for example, going up the stairs, I feel like my body kind of like deflating. So that is not ideal. So yeah, like physically, it was kind of. I ended up taking breaks when I was there, and I think that helped. So it was kind of like my spirits they're boosted. Physically, not so much, but already rested a little bit since I arrived because I want to finish recording this. Because as I mentioned before, I have been kind of like seeing improvements, not necessarily like they don't directly come from the reading itself. I just think that the reading allows me to kind of like assess where I am at, and kind of like the things that matter to me, kind of like they allow me to kind of like assess who I am. And since that I've been trying to figure that out lately, trying to define who I am as a person, particularly because of trauma, because I've had several traumas throughout my life, and they always changed the way I behaved, the way I dealt with the world, and I'm trying to go back to that fresh version of myself from when I was a kid, which was very kind of like excited and outgoing and happy, and like I would find there's like I always find a solution for things. I was kind of like resourceful that way, so there's no I don't know, I think I felt like very limitless, like there wasn't anything to cap my I don't know, like my prospects, my perspective was that everything was possible naturally. Like now that I'm an adult, I know that not everything is possible, and that there are a lot of things that we are kind of like tied to. So a socioeconomic situation like that makes a huge difference, in terms of like how far we can go, and that is yeah. But that's something I was also thinking about this because yesterday I went to the movies with my parents. We watched Project Hail Mary, Hail Mary, and I had already watched it with my cousin. It's a really sweet, cute movie. Both my parents liked it. I mean, I haven't really seen anybody who has watched the movie and not liked it. I think that there is this kind of like hopeful quality to it, and I don't know, I thought it was going to be like, I'm gonna watch it again, but no, I enjoyed it. And also I was able to kind of like see some things, notice certain things from the first time, now that I knew where this story was going. And it is very hopeful and very sweet, to the point that, but I don't know, I'm not even mad at it because basically, like, it's not that I want people to die just for the sake of dying, it's just that they go through some things, and that could lead to kind of like some interesting conversations that what would happen. But then the movie would have been like more of a tragedy, and I think that's what they were going for. But regardless, so when we were going, we met my aunt and my uncle. And like my dad shared a little phrase that like his boss really likes, which is that and apparently like he saw it in when it was in like a very small hotel when he was moving, because like there's a lot of like cities, and I don't think they're actually cities, they're towns, a lot of historical towns, like lots of history in the cities, not cities, in the towns around my city. And in one of like these trips, he found a saying that was that it takes a lot of work for it to be lucky. And I would say that there is something about that I see why it's motivating, but it's one of those things that like, okay, you're not taking into account a lot of different things. Not everybody is born in the same situation, so yes, hard work, like it does mean something. It's kind of like interesting because it's emblematic of my change as a person. I have this tattoo right here, it is hand holding a scepter, hand holding a sword, not a sword, a dagger, and it says Labo Omnia Vincit, which is like work conquers all. And when I got this tattoo back when I was 19, it was 2017, but I got this tattoo because in my head there's absolutely nothing that I couldn't achieve. And that's the kind of like belief that you have when you're young, and then you get older and you realize that there are lots of limitations to what you can achieve. That doesn't mean that you have to be unhappy or that you can't achieve things that are important to you. It's just that people have different starting points, and like that makes a huge difference. So yeah, so I think the idea when I got this tattoo was that I basically was in control of all the variables, and that I would be able to reach the sky, like as far as I wanted. And like right now I've kind of like gone back and forth. It's kind of like come full circle in that to me it means right now that I am that like I'm not gonna think about the things I can't control. I'm gonna focus on the things that they're within my control, and I'm gonna focus on those, and I'm going to achieve things based on that. So yeah, no, I'm not really planning on getting this tattoo removed or whatever, because it does represent a certain idea that I had at a certain point in time, but it's also very how do I put it, like it's also, I don't know, there's a certain naivety to kind of like that idea. There's a certain, so I think that is kind of like the thing. When I think about myself when I was younger, there was a level of naivety that was kind of like present, and I think it's not just me. It is the kind of like invincibility that you feel when you're young. You think that like you're in control of everything, that you're the master of your own universe, and then you kind of like you keep existing and you realize that that's not really the case. Doesn't mean that you have to despair, for example, but still. Anyways, this was a very long intro. So I was reading. So we're reading this paragraph. Sagittarians want to know everything. They can become lost in their endless quest for knowledge, questioning things in their way of forming a coherent worldview. It's also a way of finding new ways to experience the world. Their endless curiosity can lead them to rebuild the very foundations of their beliefs. Because of their hunger for knowledge, Sagittarians are restless and can have a hard time following through. I would say that I do relate to the follow through, like that particular notion, because like I start so many things. I don't think that I'm at a point right now where I'm doing well in terms of like concluding the things I've started, but sometimes like the things you're doing, like the end is so far away. For example, college, I'm in the first semester of this course of this major that I'm studying, which means that there's like 4 more years. I'm halfway through the first semester. I mean, we're getting closer to the end of the semester. It's May. But it is something that I kind of I wanna follow through. I wanna get to the point where I graduate, but it's so far away, and it's kind of like demotivating, for you to just look at how far away certain things are, and it feels like doesn't it feel like you're betraying yourself? Because I mean, I should be more persistent, more resilient. Yeah, I think that's the word, resilient. But yeah, so I think that I want to do a lot of things. I start doing a lot of things and I conclude very, very little of them. Although, as I said, lately, this past couple of years, I've been doing better in terms of that, because you should be kind of like, I'm thinking about myself in 2016 when I was 18, and I started so many different things and I didn't conclude a single one. I'm talking about courses that I decided to take, novels I decided to write. And to be fair, like I wanted to write, too many things. It was seemingly impossible for me. Even if I had been exclusively writing for, like this past decade, I would not have been able to write everything that I want, particularly because, like my novels now, they're kind of like taking a certain time. Like I am working on this novel. It's been more like almost 2 years, and there's still like a little way for me to go. So I'm thinking that maybe I want to conclude the novel this year, but it is kind of like there is a possibility that it's going to be the next year, which is 3 years. Is less than the time that it took me to write book 2, but it still is kind of like, I don't know, I think I wish I could kind of like put out one novel per year, but as long as they are like as long as they kind of are, I don't think that's possible. Although I do look around and I see other authors, and they are all kind of like putting up this long as novels every year, like as long as mine. So it's kind of like, why can't I do that? And yes, I know that I'm not a full-time writer, so that makes a difference. I can dedicate myself entirely to writing, but still, like, I know, but that's like the fear I have, is that even if I had, I became a full-time writer and I had all the time in the world, I still would not be able to, make progress, as much progress as I kind of like want to. Like regarding my writing, and this translates to other areas of my life, because I'm kind of afraid regarding my major that what if I get tired of this, because I'm a really good I kind of like on a roll right now. I have some assignments that I have to finish, and I think I'm going to finish them this week, and then I will be able to go back, to life and to focus on other things. So for example, writing. But then I'm like, am I going to be able to write? Because that is the worst feeling when you have free time, or you have like a little window of time, in your schedule for you to do something, and then you can't do that thing because it feels like you're double wasting your time. Because you're double, yeah, it's kind of like, because I'm wasting my time because I'm not doing anything productive, but also I'm not getting closer to concluding. For example, I'm not that whatever novel I'm writing at that point in time, and that's very frustrating. So anyway, this is all to say that I can have a hard time following through. Another thing that this whole thing of like also it's also a way of finding the way to experience the world. This feels like the type of thing that you have to have money to kind of like achieve. Because I don't know, I'm doing what I can, like in terms of like what does not, cost me anything. But there's just, I don't know, because I'm having to, as I mentioned before, this month, I'll be making kind of like half what I usually make, so that is going to be, that's going to be an interesting, I'm just figuring out like how to properly make ends meet and makes ends meet. Yeah, like that's the saying. And so basically, I'm kind of like cutting short any and all side expenses, and it's making me kind of like reflect that there's like sometimes you don't really account too much for stuff. Like you have like in your you had like your little accounting book, and you kind of like you add certain things, and they're just like part of that. So for example, transportation, whether I'm taking bus or taking an Uber, I'm spending money, and like this is something that, for example, this month I'm looking, okay, I'm gonna go for example downtown to do something. I have to kind of like take into account the fact that that is going to cost a little something for me to go and for me to come back. And even like public transportation is in many ways pretty great, but also like for example, whenever my mom and I would go to do something, we live pretty close to downtown. Like I mean, it is kind of far away, but there is like one straight lane that leads there. So usually when we go there, it is cheaper for us to take an Uber than it's for us to take the bus. And so, but yeah, but it's still like it costs money, So I'm kind of like I've been really thinking going out, places where I have to kind of like pay money, because as I said, like it is a type of thing that is just like you look at it isolatedly, like it is just like one expense. But like if every day you're going somewhere and you're doing something, I have to account, for example, because I have class every day, so I'm already taking transportation to get there. And so it's kind of like it's already an expense that's happening, so I have to be kind of like way more careful about like what I'm going about. And this is making me question like, do I have to go out as much? Because usually I go out because I have fun. I don't have to buy anything. I can just see things. That is something that I enjoy doing. And there's always a risk of you spending money on something, but basically I'm kind of like I'm trying to save money, and it's making me reconsider how often I think it doesn't how long I leave the house. I think that something they have to take into account as well is how, because right now, like this month, I'm kind of like thinking about saving money. But in the future, if I realize that I can kind of like continue this pace, I will be able to kind of like save more money, and saving more money, I can do more things. Although like I'm trying to do less in terms of like rapid, gratification, so like I'm thinking about the future, so like my savings, my investments, type of stuff like that. But anyways, let's go to the next paragraph. So Sagittarius don't believe in playing it safe. They are always looking for the next great breakthrough and almost never look back. This tendency to abandon things before they even get started often leaves them feeling like they never quite get anything done. I will say that I do have this feeling, not so much this past couple of years, as I mentioned. I think I've been fixing that aspect of myself, but like the sense of completion is something that like I kind of struggle with, and there's only so much that like one thing can do for you. So for example, when I look at my novel, like my novels, and there's like this really good feeling of like, oh, I completed this thing, I finished this project. But like the farther away I get from like the last last time this happened was when it was like June 24th, 2024. So we're getting close to June 2026, which means there's been like a couple of years since that happened, and I am kind of stuck one way or another. And so like basically like the sense of satisfaction from that like is no longer doing anything for me. I want to finish this one, but I kind of like already know that I'm gonna finish this novel, and then the next one is going to start haunting me, and I will have to, I don't know, I think I'll be on this endless loop. Although I will say that if I have, for example, like graduating college, like if when I graduate this major I'm studying, like will that mean that would that carry me through, like some of the satisfaction I have, regarding my academic status? I think it would probably suffice, but then, in no time I'll start thinking about the next step, like how do I get a master's or a PhD, or, something. And I think this is the nature of life. And it's not entirely a bad thing, if it gets you going every day, like that is good. Like you just get you to kind of like not grow complacent, but it can also, cross the line sometimes and get to a point where it's just generating negative feelings, and just that. It's not getting, motivated. Sometimes when things get, too overwhelming, they, you start kind of like giving up, in a certain way. Maybe you're not giving up as per se, but like you consider that because you feel like it is just too much, and that is not the best way to look to kind of like exist in life, to go about your life that is not particularly productive, having those feelings and having to fight them. But as I said, like, so basically I think that for the longest time, like I used those negative feelings as what was kind of like pushing me through, and what I want right now is a little bit different. I want to be able, because there's something about anger, and sometimes like anger can motivate you, can get you to kind of like get things done, but it's kind of like it's this corrosive force, so you're kind of like dying inside as you feel that. So I want right now to be able to kind of like control my feelings as if like I had some type of power, so instead of like controlling, like channeling my power through anger, I want to channel it through habit. I want to kind of like develop like that as a skill, and I mean it is a skill, motivating yourself, but it is kind of like one of those things that easier said than done because I think I'm making a whole lot of progress, but there is still so much to be done, and so much that I have to fix. I'm still kind of like, and I was going to say that I'm falling behind, but like, come on, like get that idea out of my head. I'm competing here with myself. That is kind of like the thing. Although I will say that this whole thing of competing with yourself, it can be kind of harmful if like the version of yourself you're comparing yourself to is kind of like a fantasy version of you, like, because then you're not comparing yourself to reality, you're comparing yourself to a dream, to like some delusion, and that is not healthy for you, because you're always going to come short of like the version of you that you have yourself, that you have in your head. So that's not great. But yeah, so they're always looking for the next great breakthrough, which I think is something that was more, present in my demeanor, my behavior when I was like very young. Very young, I mean like my late teens, early 20s. That is pretty much, like that happened a lot more. I was kind of like looking for the next thing because I had ambition. I had, this very intense desire of succeeding. But succeeding at what? Like that was the biggest question, because I think I mentioned this yesterday. I could kind of like see myself from a certain point forward. I knew what I was going to do, but from the present to this version, I had nothing. I had just dreams, and there was no plan, no planning. I fooled myself thinking that I was planning, but I was just fantasizing. So there's that. I don't want to go back to that mindset, because it is really hard to get out of it. When you if you're stuck there for too long. So Sagittarius in sex, love, and romance. This is most relevant to Sagittarius Venus and Mars, though Sagittarius suns may identify with some traits. I don't think I'm either of any. Okay, let me just go and look at like the birthday chart again. So basically, I baked the cake. I baked the cake, and I made some, I made some dessert. I made not some dessert. I made brigadeiro, which is this it is this, sweet that we have here in Brazil, which is basically condensed milk, butter, some butter. No, I don't know what butter. I mean, it depends, on the chef, I guess. And so, and chocolate powder. And I made some, to cover it, and it was pretty good. And also, I bought this the other day. It was kind of like this paste, because they have, like Kit Kat, they have Rocher, they have Galac. They make this all these pastes that you can apply, and they are usually very delicious. But I got this one that was pretty cheap. I mean, I got it because it was cheap, and basically I kind of it's not great, and it's also not very healthy. I mean, it's not that the other ones are healthy, but like it is particularly it's kind of bad. Okay, let's just see my natal chart. And so I used it, in the cake. I used it for the filling, and then I had one coat of it on top of it, and then the brigadeiro. So it was pretty nice. And I'm kind of like, it kind of sucks when you buy something and then you just, I'm not gonna throw it away, but like I'm just using it kind of like willy-nilly to get through it, okay, let's see. So I am a Scorpio Sun, which we already knew, Leo Moon, which I also already knew, and my ascendant is a Scorpio as well. I think those are, the big three. But so I was looking at Sagittarius, which is my Mercury, and but there's Zodiac Tropical, and then there's Placidus Orb, which I don't know what that means. But the number 2, I think it's my second ascendant is Sagittarius. So Mercury, what exactly is Mercury? So Mercury Zodiac. Okay, so I basically baked this cake. I've been getting back into baking cakes. In astrology, Mercury rules communication, intellect, and cognitive processes, governing how you think, learn, and express ideas. It rules Gemini and Virgo. So that is, what Mercury means. So it's communication, intellect, and cognitive processes, which means that this is how where was I? Okay, I was here. So my Mercury is Sagittarius. So everything I just read, plus the stuff in the previous video and the one before that towards the end, is how I communicate, my intellect, and my cognitive process. So there's that. Okay, so that is like this Sagittarius in sex, love, and romance, which I'm not really interested in people, like I don't want to actually have a relationship. Once again, like I'm open. If something happens, it happens, but like it's not something I'm actively looking for. So I don't think how this could help me in any way. I mean, it could help me understand how I am, right? I guess. But it was fun. It was funny. It was funny. The last one that I read, I think I skipped Leo. I should read it again. But okay, so how to seduce a Sagittarius? Point at the book they're reading and claim that you hate it. That's, I don't know, I feel like all the suggestions, they're so like, it's definitely a better way for you to do this. You don't have to insult, something. I mean, not there's anything wrong with criticizing, like things. It's just that you're just doing this for the sake of like this interaction. I don't know. But yeah, so you point at a book they're reading and claim that you hate it. Cite a bold but generic reason. I mean, if you want to kind of like read yourself out like that, the hole you're digging, that's a good choice. But yeah, what a bold reason. What a bold reason. I don't know, because I'm thinking of like a lot of books that, like we read, like what exactly, I don't know, like maybe the things I'm reading are just too placid, and that doesn't, I can kind of like see, and by having too strong an opinion, or maybe I'm kind of placid and I'm not really as sharp as I could be. Okay, so share with them your personal philosophy that the world would be a much better place if everyone learned to laugh way more and cry a little less. I don't know if I like this. I think you can laugh and cry. I think they're both healthy. I try to, when was the last time I cried? I think that, things have been causing me a lot of distress, but it's that level of distress that, I don't know if like, I'm not crying about it. I don't know. After your first night together, ask them to elope. That is insane. If somebody just straight up can like ask me to elope, I would just run away. I don't know, maybe there is like a set of circumstances in which I would find this appealing, but not relating so far. The Sagittarius fall in love quickly. Sagittarians are incredibly open, which leads them to fall in love quickly. They don't need much time to decide if they want to. Sagittarians don't see the point of caution because they feel they've already run the calculation and determined that the potential for reward outweighs the risk. So I do think I'm open, but I don't think that makes me kind of like fall in love quickly. I mean, as I mentioned before, I've never really been in love, and like not even close, to be completely honest. I don't know, usually like familiarity with people just makes me kind of like more hesitant. I don't think that this has to do with some of my commitment issues, which by the way, I think when you're talking about this, you're thinking very intensely, and I think that I've been able to kind of like overcome most of them, so I don't think that is an issue anymore. But it is something that for the longest time it really got in the way because I couldn't, get if I got a little too attached. It's interesting because it's not only attached to people or to, organizations, beliefs, or whatever. It could be, could be like a fandom or something. If I got, too attached, like that made me kind of like just, take a step back and push that away. But yeah, so I don't think I fall in love quickly. Although, as I said, maybe I just haven't met the right person, and maybe the right person would get me to kind of like just. I don't think that is very. I don't know. I just feel like there's the entirety of my life versus one possibility of something happening. Like, how likely is that? Although I will say that, as I mentioned before, none of the people who have ever approached me one way or another have kind of like have interested me like that. So maybe what I need is to find somebody intriguing and interesting. This sounds like I'm insulting the other people who have come and gone from my life. Like, no, they are all special in their own little way. It's just that their special way didn't match with my special way, I guess. Also, like, I feel like there's like a fine line between you kind of like convincing yourself that you've run all the calculations and that you actually, just decide to wing it, because, like all the calculations, like that's a lot, it's very intense. You have to kind of like consider so many variables. So sometimes like you just kind of like jump on that and just like, no, I considered it. Like you didn't, but you're just jumping into that situation. Maybe I'm speaking about myself because I used to think that I was I wanted to think of myself as a very calculated person, that I was thinking of all the variables and of all the possibilities. And then what I realized looking back is that sometimes I just kind of gave up. I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna go with what makes more sense for me at this point in time, with what I want to do. But it's also like something that has changed. Like I've actually changed because I used to actually consider all the possibilities. There were the situations where I kind of just gave up. Although I will say that I think it aligns with me being manic or depressed. Because when I'm depressed, that's just too overwhelming. Like just too many calculations to run. And when I'm manic, I just really trust myself. Like my instincts. So I'm not really doing these calculations. But then like I think the rest of the time I was just an extent thinking about everything that could go wrong and trying to kind of like work with it. And right now I think lately I've been more focused on how instead of like looking broadly at the situations and the things happening in my life, I'm kind of like focusing on the small print, you could say. Actually, no, not the small print. I'm not doing that at all. I'm focusing on like the bare minimum of what I had to consider for me to make a choice. Although that is also changing. I was talking about money just now, and basically I think that this month will transform the way I deal with money. Honestly, I really do think that it will, specifically because I realized that there are certain things that they were so kind of like ingrained in my schedule that I didn't realize that I could do without them, and that is going to lead to me kind of like saving my money. I'm not gonna lie, I'm thinking of tattoos. That is pretty much what I'm thinking. I feel like next month I can keep my my expenses and stuff I do to a minimum. I'm gonna have more money to get more tattoos, and naturally it's, I don't know, man, it's one of those things that because there is not just like me deciding that I want a tattoo and me kind of like saving money for said tattoo. I had to have a whole conversation with my dad, and I've been finding that because I kind of like I exist in different phases where sometimes like I'm super invested in tattoos and I'm like researching, I'm thinking about what I want, I'm kind of like coming up with, I can't draw, but I can describe it, so my artist can draw what I want. And it's one of those things that sometimes I'm super excited. For example, whenever I lay down, like I've been trying like not to check my phone too much when I lay down, so I can have better I can sleep more easily, and also like I have a better smoother transition, into like being awake and sleeping, and all those other reasons that I have for not to want screens in your face. And I and so some of the things that I've been doing lately is just sometimes I put on like a little soothing music and I listen to it and I go to bed. And then sometimes I'm going on Pinterest and I'm seeing things. And I will say Pinterest gets a bad rap in terms of tattoos because there are some specific ones that get super popular, but like they have a little bit of everything there. Like I found all different styles and different kind of like artists. So I'm positively impressed. And sometimes like I don't know exactly what I want, but usually seeing that it kind of like if because I have an idea, I have a vision, but because I can't draw, sometimes like it's kind of hard for me to put into words what I mean. So sometimes if finding like the right image, it really kind of like it kind of like shows like it helps the artist understand what you're doing. But basically, I don't know why I went on a tangent. The point I'm trying to make is that I have been thinking about tattoos, and then there are points where I'm not really thinking about them. I always have an appointment, truth be told, for the next one, but usually like it takes months because I have to save the money. Oh yeah, but the thing I was trying to say is that I think it helps, for in terms of my dad, for him to kind of like know what I'm thinking in terms of tattoos, because then he has time to process, like the next tattoo and then the one next after that. But yeah, so I don't know why I went into this direction. Let's go back. Love, like all emotions, are fleeting to Sagittarians. They don't need to hold on to it or to possess or possesses. Okay, love, like all emotions, are fleeting to Sagittarians. They don't need to hold on to it or possess love to validate its existence. Interesting. They are attracted to novelty and love the idea that they can move on quickly. If they don't fall in love at first sight, usually it doesn't take too long. Once again, I feel like that in this particular area, I don't have the answers about myself, because like the whole point of this is for me to look internally and kind of like see where I am at. But in this particular context, I'm kind of like I don't really know what is there to know. But yeah, but I will say that a lot of emotions are fleeting to me, but a lot of emotions, they really linger, and that is one of the main things I've been trying to kind of like fix about myself lately, which is how sometimes the negative thoughts, the negative things that kind of like have happened, that I have witnessed, that I have experienced, like they're all there and they drag me down. So I've been trying to make sure that I don't linger in that. It's kind of hard, not gonna lie. It's something that some days I do better than others. For example, in days like today where I'm feeling a little weak, it kind of like gets in the way because things affect me more. But at the same time, like I've been seeing a really huge improvement for my part, where basically I've been able to kind of move past things. So yeah, so I wish that more things were more fleeting for me. Although at the same time, like I wish some things they would be more permanent. If you have like having a bad moment, if I'm having a bad moment, a good moment, having like all these positive emotions, sometimes it feels like it just goes away like that, and I wish that it would last longer. So maybe this is something I don't know how exactly to fix this, but I am fixing it one way or another, at least the part of like negative emotions being a little bit more fleeting. They don't hold on to it or possess love to validate its existence. I would say that I don't, yeah, like I don't possess love to validate my existence, to validate its existence in this case, but also like not my existence. I have love in my life. I have people who I love and I care about, and they care about me, which is pretty much what you want, right? You want this kind of like back and forth, this mutual back and forth in the way you're doing. But I will say that sometimes like it feels a little too much. Sometimes I need a moment. It's basically what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I really need to kind of to push everyone away so I can have a moment of peace. And once again, this coincides a lot with me feeling how I'm feeling, energy. My energy is like both my physical energy and my mental energy. And sometimes I just, but I have been able to kind of like to supply myself with like moments and situations where I don't where I can kind of like vent a little bit, or at least not vent, like saturate the level of commitment I'm feeling, I guess. So if they don't fall in love the first time, it usually doesn't take long. I wonder because at the same time that I'm like I never really had this experience, I've also fallen deep regarding certain properties. Let's say I'm thinking about fandoms again. There's big situations where I'm very, but like I really fell in love head over heels for some group of something, and it was very quick and it lingered. So I'm just thinking like could I feel that towards like a person, because my experiences, like I don't, there's nobody new. For example, who do I have, who am I closest to? There's like my parents, who have known me since before I was born, and who I've known, since before I was born, right? I'm technically could argue that because I've known my mom since before I was born, I was inside of her. But my dad was from the moment I was born. Okay, this is so irrelevant. I don't know why I got caught up in that. But and it's also like my parents. So we kind of like, there is this expectation that you love them and they love you. I know this is not the reality for everybody, but this has always been my reality. It's not never really gotten too far away from that. So it is interesting because so like they've been there for so long, so like I feel like we don't have to make as much of an effort, not that we are that I'm like half-assing my relationship with my parents, not at all. It's just that we already have this camaraderie, like this history. So I know that they love me, not just because they say that, but because of their actions. And I feel like the other relations I had, like they also come from a while ago, and I think the history really helps. So I don't know how, like if I were to interact with somebody who would appeal to me, despite the, like how, despite like the fact that we don't have history, for example, how would that go? Because I think I've been mentioning this, that because I'm talking about how I don't want a relationship, but I'm specifically thinking of like a romantic relationship, like relationships, like platonic ones. I could do that, I could, I don't know, do I, that's like the question I have, like would I be able to handle having somebody interacting with me for too long? Because as I said, I need a break, I need breaks from people, which is why, for example, when I'm like going through my phone at night, which I'm trying to no longer do, I never go to my messages or anything like that. I'm not watching, not seeing messages and not seeing emails. It's just like a little moment of relaxation with myself. But like it does have this effect. Because I feel like it feels like there's a weight that drags me down whenever, if I feel like, or if I have like too many messages, because I feel like I can't handle it. It feels like not so much that I can't handle it, but like I don't want to handle it. So there is this kind of like this disparity there. But anyways, Sagittarians will often fall in love with the idea of a person because they're also very independent and prone to wandering. They get bored easily. Their sights are always set on the next height or adventure. In a certain way, I guess like I can relate to this. I feel like sometimes like you fall in love with the idea, not of a person, the idea of something. So you can talking about a movie, a TV show, a game, a book, any type of content. And I think that we all fall in love with the idea of something of that thing, not necessarily with the person themselves. And something I've been kind of like noticing this past week or so, that I've been seeing a lot of like dissent, you could say, dissent in the sense of people calling out other people. And I made the mistake of kind of like clicking in some of those situations, and I don't know, it's ultimately like I realized like, oh, I don't care. I feel like, and I don't know if this is a new thing, for me, because maybe like a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have been like, okay, I'm so disappointed in this person, and also it doesn't help that like I'm seeing things from like things that are familiar, but like I haven't, a lot of this I haven't really interacted in years, so I think that making me more prone to not care. But but as I said, like it was like 3 or 4 different situations, all of them completely separate, different areas, different fandoms, you could say. And some of them are, I don't think you can call fandom something that has to do with like real life, but it's just like these different situations, these different groups of people. And it's interesting because a part of me, I think that if I was younger, it would have kind of like affected me, because there would be kind of like that break of you would be breaking this vision you have of like that individual, that institution, and like right now I'm just kind of like don't care. And I think it's a mix of like me getting older and like managing my expectations, because I feel like, because of my trauma, once again, we're back talking about trauma, but because of it, I think there's something that would happen a lot, is that I kind of like try to project onto certain things, this kind of like sense of safety. So whenever there was any type of break, this disconnection, any disconnect between like that thing that was kind of like a safe place for me and the rest of the world, like it would affect me, nothing groundbreaking here, but I'm thinking about, and it's interesting how things change for you, because I'm thinking of politics specifically, and how like some of the things that affected me back in like 2016, like pretty much I would be on the opposite side of like that argument, that discussion, if my current self was to were to go back. And because basically I it's kind of crazy, because on one hand, like I like where I landed in terms of like what my beliefs are is just very straightforward. Like if you knew me as a kid, you knew that I was, I could get to this point, and I got to this point. But there's also like the fact that sometimes like you were brought up with certain ideas, certain ideals. So like the way that I would sometimes like things would translate from the way that I thought to the way that for the real from to the real life situations happening, like it would be a little thwarted, a little yeah, a little uh yeah, like a little I'm not finding the word that I want. It'll be distorted, basically. Like so I would have a lot of intensity, and I would engage a lot with things, but basically I don't know. I just, it makes me cringe a little bit when I see the things I was saying. And I don't think I never said any. I don't think I've ever said anything that would get me canceled. Like in general, like I probably said something that like a small group of people would take issue with. But particularly because I was also very broad. This is also an issue that I have with like my channels, because I would never really talk about things openly. I would be kind of yeah, like I wouldn't I don't know, like I would just be very vague, because I didn't want to get specific, particular with like what exactly I was saying, because I was kind of like insecure and embarrassed almost. I think the way that I had to present myself for me to get to the point, it's kind of crazy, because like right now I'm just myself, but for so many years I was so stuck in these different versions of myself, the different versions, and those versions, they were affected by places and that you've been, people that you met, interactions that you've had, and it's very it's very interesting to kind of like see how like two people can have like, for example, the exact same experience, but they can land on completely different aspects of a conversation or a discussion about what happened. And it's kind of like important for you to kind of like notice, see if like the reason why you think something is not because that's what you think, but that's pretty much what you're supposed to think based on this environment that you grew up in. So for me, I'm talking about religion, talking about politics, talking about I don't know, just general because like I have I was brought up Christian, and I look at my sense of morality when I was like a kid, for example, there, and you take pretty much the same person, but like in a different version of Christianity, there's like a lot of things. There's an overlap for sure, but there's also like differences, because there's also like different types of Christians, and I'm not talking just about Catholics and Protestants. I think beside like each of those, there's like many other smaller categories, and they all kind of and they all have something in common, but they also I think that is something that sometimes I think about, because I think in terms of like of a country growing, a country developing, and there are things about my country that I love. I love my country very dearly, don't get me wrong, but it's just that there's just a lot of a lot of like things that are embedded in our culture and in the way we see the world, that they're kind of like not really helping us evolve. They're not really helping us grow. And the thing is, like, I don't have a solution for that. I think I spent a lot of my time when I was younger thinking about how exactly do I go about my day when I know that this is not good. It's not the case. But I've kind of given up, which I know is bad, but I don't know what else to do, because I don't really have a voice. I can try and argue with the people who surround me, but like they are usually already on the same page, I think that it does make me kind of like think sometimes, because like because I was brought up with these very strong morals. So if I had been brought up in a more lax, context, like would I be less bothered by things? I mean, like, 'cause I feel like ultimately everybody has a vision of their country and how it used to be, how it is right now, and how they want it to be. And everybody is in one of those situations, either everybody's right or everybody's wrong. Naturally, like there are certain miscalculations in the way that people kind of like see the past. So sometimes they can attribute something that was not really the case there. But I can just imagine like just ignoring those outliers, just thinking about, I guess, like a lot of like average Joes and how they see the country. And I don't know, I still don't have a solution, because as I said, I'm already kind of like in this environment, and the contact I have with other people, maybe like this is also like an issue. I should interact with people more, because right now I really am at a point where I can kind of like do more in terms of like interacting with people, but at the same time, like, do I want to do that, or do I want to save myself for like when some in specific? Because like if you start something, it's one of those things, like it's like, for example, when you schedule an appointment, like this, you kind of like, you decide you're going to go out with somebody and they cancel kind of like last minute. I mean, sucks, they might already be ready, but there is that relief, like there is like that thing. Although, to be fair, like usually if I schedule to go somewhere with a person and they can't go, I usually go by myself and I have a great time, jolly old time I have. And but the point is that there's like, I don't know, I think that I'm good with somebody, I'm good without somebody, and like they're both great. But I could I be doing more? Is there more that I can do? So is there more that, not that I can do, because there's always more that you can do, but like, is there more that I should do? Should I like try to engage with people more? Should I like do something about it, and about like my lack of socialization, because that is something that I think that it kind of like made a difference in terms of like how I developed as a person, because as I said before, many times before, like after my trauma 13, I had other traumas, but like this one is very it's like, because a lot of the other traumas, like it is a series of situations that happen. So like, so for example, when I was dealing with then those situations, like in therapy, like you had to kind of like disarm, but like they were kind of like smaller, so I had to disarm more situations, but each of them, like they were like less in intensity than the one that was like big. But the point is that I really isolated myself. So I think that in terms of socialization, I'm kind of like lacking, I just I've been trying to fix this past decade, but it's I always end up running into the same problem, which is that I get tired, which is something that I think they're saying that, because I hear, because yeah, like I get tired, and I no longer, I don't want to just I'm never going to treat people like garbage, disposable garbage. Like, no, I will kind of like make a point of saying things and kind of like letting them know, or at least like be polite and cordial in the way that I'm doing things. But at the same time, like sometimes I'm just tired, but it's why it's important for you to set boundaries with yourself. Because, for example, I usually I try to go and open my WhatsApp at least like once a day, for, I mean, and now that I have class, like I've been definitely looking at it for more than once, to see if there's any news, anything. But when I don't have anything going on, I usually can go days without looking at my WhatsApp. And that is, and that is kind of like a boundary that I set, that I'm not gonna, I might not answer you like the same day or the next day or the day after that, but like every third day I can answer you. And it's one of those things that you can be kind of like concerned that why are they thinking? Do they think that I don't care about them? But it is a boundary that you have to set, for you to kind of like live a good life. Otherwise you get kind of like stuck with like unnecessary burdens, because that is kind of like the thing. I'm thinking about myself, for example, when I was in church back in the day, like after the trauma, I would sometimes get very not invested, but like I get very involved in the things that were happening, and they would just really burn me. They would drag me down, like they would just really kind of like I would feel sometimes like so so affected, as if like I'm like I'm a little piece of clothes in a washing machine, kind of like just being tossed around. And at a certain point I ended up breaking free, And it was not even for this particular reason, but it was a lesson that I learned from like that situation, which is that, you know, it's okay for you to kind of like your strength, because that's also like one of the reasons that I would kind of like keep going, is because I was like, I have to do this, because if I don't, I'm weak. So I would kind of like learn that it's okay for you to be weak sometimes. Sometimes you have these moments, you know, of weakness. I mean, you could even argue that this is not weakness, it's just, you know, establishing boundaries and all that, but that's kind of like how it felt for me at the time. Felt like I couldn't, you know, handle things, I couldn't, you know, like do things, and that was kind of you know, the case. But anyways, the sights are always set on the next high trail or adventure. This is something that I feel like, you know, when my ADHD is like, you know, overactive, that is kind of like something that I relate to. Pretty much why I said that this reminds me of type 7 of the Enneagram. So what do Sagittarians find attractive? Sagittarians are looking for someone to have a good time with. They want to be able to experience the world without having to worry about the consequences of their actions or getting tied down. They need someone who doesn't take life too seriously. I guess, you know, like I relate to this. I don't know if it would be kind of like the leading, you know, traits that I would define myself with, but yeah, I kind of like need, although I will say that for the most part I am trying, you know, like not to take things too seriously, and that is something that has completely changed my life, you know, like made me more involved, or more yeah, like it made me more invested in my own life, you know, and less burdened by, you know, like the way of the world. And I am looking for so yeah, but that's the thing though, I'm like, am I, because I have a tendency of saying that I don't want to get tied down, you know, in terms of like me, I don't want a romantic relationship. But as I said, like, what if like that is just a barrier that comes from, you know, the trauma, and that I haven't really found somebody, you know, who is kind of like the, but I don't believe that there's a right person for you. I think that, you know, like, don't believe in soulmates or anything like that, but that's what, there's definitely people you fit in, you kind of like, you fit together. So like maybe I haven't found like a person that made me feel this way, but yeah. So I will say that I sometimes I'm trying to do better, because, you know, I'm an adult, you know, like I'm a responsible adult, I'm a productive member of society, and I feel sometimes I just do things without thinking too much, and then I'm not thinking about the consequences. And I will say that it has not helped me, that so far in my life I have been able to kind of like avoid the very permanent consequences of things that I'm doing, you know, like, so I can have so I can have you know, like something bad happens, but, you know, like they're not permanent consequences, so that doesn't help. But so I'm trying to be a little bit more responsible like that, so I don't need anybody to kind of like tell me to be less responsible. But yeah, so I see. So they oh yeah, but like what I was talking about was the thing of like taking life too seriously. I think that is kind of like a defense mechanism for me, you know, kind of like making, kind of relativizing situations. I don't even know if this is a word in English, but making things relative, you know, like kind of comparing things, because I think that is something I do particularly aloud, you know, so, you know, I can be kind of like unbothered, because there is almost a bio there, you know, bio wits, you could say, in which like I want to win that interaction, and you win by not caring. So, you know, like not taking things seriously is a part of that. So there's been situations in my life in which I was, let's say we were in a duel, the other party might not even, you know, think of it so intensely, but for me it was kind of like, it was a match, we're, you know, going back and forth. So the way that I would win a lot of these matches was by, you know, pointing out how, not pointing out, but like, you know, the way that I was presenting, you know, the topic or whatever, like I was pretty much making it feel like that it was very unimportant, you know, that, you know, like, why do you care so much, you know, and then make fun of it, make light of it. And once again, I think this is a very, very clear example of like this being a, you know, like defense mechanism for me. It is one that I'm trying to deal with it, because basically, like, you might seem like you don't care, but you are angry, so like deep down you do care, so you have all the negative effects of, you know, you being angry and being kind of like you know, you, so all the negative things that come from like grudging, you know, somebody, begrudging, you know, somebody, or, you know, like being resentful. And I don't want that, you know, I want to generally not care, but I think that I'm succeeding in some ways. I think that there are like several areas of my life where I can look at the situations and be like, no, look at that. It's it's quite something. But it's still like there's a long way to go. Um, to Sagittarians, brains are the hottest part of the body because they're ruled by the planet of wisdom. They appreciate people who have an intellectual edge, a way with words, and a sharp sense of humor. Sagittarians are attracted to the kind of person who inspires them to think bigger thoughts, to open themselves up to the infinite. They feel the most alive when they are around people who bring out this philosopher in them. I do like philosophizing about things. I like talking about things, and I don't know if like these videos they count because I am talking, but it's a lot about it. It has to do with myself. But sometimes by exploring yourself, like you can kind of like figure out the world. It's pretty much something that I think they said here at some point. I don't know. Do I think that the brain are the hottest part of the body? I think that I'm very fortunate in terms of being able to kind of like interact with other brainy people. I'm not saying that like everybody's wired all the time, and like they're not capable of like doing other things. But I don't know. I'm thinking about what's somebody like. Let me think of like a dumb person I have to interact on a like daily basis, and I cannot think of anybody, even like tangentially. So I think I'm very fortunate in that way. So I don't know if I can actually say if this is my preference, because maybe if I did find somebody a little dumb, but like I would, like I would be more bothered. But like right now, I don't have a whole lot to say about like this paragraph. Honestly, I will say that they're ruled by the planet of wisdom. I like that. I appreciate that. I want that. I mean, I'll prepare like to look into my life. Like I don't know if I've been ruled by the planet of wisdom. So there's that. Why are Sagittarius single? Sagittarians are single because they are searching for a soulmate. Instead, they are trying to figure out what love is. They are students of love and have a deep admiration for it. Sagittarians think about love more than any other sign. I don't think that I think about love more than anyone of any other sign. As I said before, like I would be willing to kind of like have an experience. As I said, like I never really fallen in love or anything like that, and like I don't want anything permanent, to be completely honest. Like I don't want to find somebody that we're gonna be together forever. That is a little scary. That's a little not what I want. But having like that experience, because everywhere I look at, apparently I'm supposed to be an intense, very involved lover. So I don't know. I just think about the songs, talking about people. You just need someone. You just want somebody to love. You just need somebody to love, and it's an interesting feeling because I feel like if you ask me, this when I was 18, like I'll be like, no, I don't want anybody to love. Why the fuck would I even want that? Sounds like responsibility. And like these days, I'm like, I am looking for new experiences. Like that could be something. And I usually not thinking about this so much, but like reading this astrology thing is just making me, what, like maybe that is something, because everybody has positive things to say about being in love. They say like it feels good, and there's some experiences like there's a lot of songs. I think most songs they kind of like describe love in some way or another. And I sometimes I listen to music and I'll be like, oh, I wanna feel this. I want to experience this. This seems like something fun to experience. But I don't know, I feel like every day, because I'm also like not making an effort, because if I were making an effort, then maybe you could argue that one day I would figure that out, but I'm not. So it's kind of they are too busy composing the symphony that is life. Every experience, adventure, and person that Sagittarius meets along the way is a movement in a symphony. Every potential partner they meet is a potential instrument. They're not in need of one special person to complete them. Amen, I guess. I don't know. Sagittarians are scared of surrendering their freedom and being at the mercy of another person. They are afraid of being vulnerable and trusting. This is why Sagittarians are always on the move. They need new horizons. Sagittarians feel that they need to be swimming the river of life rather than resting on the shore. They want constant change, constant interaction, and constant movement. Interesting, because I think about myself, today. I think this also has to do with me getting older, but and the idea here of resting on the shore, like I think when I was, I know I'm saying this a lot, but it's true. When I was younger, I was much more caught up in the tides, and I wanted, and it's not that I don't want that right now, but I have been able to find peace by resting on the shore. I think like writing is a great example of that, because like if you think about myself some years ago, when would I ever, choose, to stay home rather than going out and doing something? And lately, I'm like, yeah, I want to stay home. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna write. I'm gonna develop my world. I'm going to, like there's things to do here. So it's interesting because like I think after my trauma, like I became a homebody basically. It wasn't so much, yeah, like I became kind of like really attached to home, and I didn't really go out, I didn't interact. And now I understand that there was fear, there was like a lot of like different emotions happening, but like an interesting thing to keep in mind is that I still craved, going out, but I didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel like I had the opportunities to do that, which is something that when I became an adult, like particularly after I started treating my trauma, like I started to kind of like find myself, outside of like the little corner that I had been put into, so I was more than just, where I was studying, where I was working on, like whose children I was, whose child I was, and I think that allowed me to kind of like, live my life a little bit more. Also I was working, I was studying, so I was doing things outside of the house, and like that made a huge difference. And I started to find myself more, outside. And and I think like every time I left the house, or for example I went somebody after work instead of like going straight home, like I was building myself in a certain way. I was defining this new version of myself, and there's no right or wrong way of fixing yourself, or dealing with your traumas, but this was the way that I found. And I think that I went from like one extreme to the next, and then to right now kind of like be somewhere in the middle. I think that myself, me, myself, and I'm kind of like, but it's kind of like this, it's like a tide, because sometimes I will be kind of like going out more. I'll find something, that, because that's basically the thing, like we can all be resourceful. So if there's something I'm missing, I know, because sometimes like things are kind of forbidden for you. Forbidden, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but like for me, they're forbidden in the sense that like my doctors told me like not to, do that. So usually I don't do that because it's not going to be good for me. But there is, the fact that basically yeah, like there's I have free will, basically. I don't believe in the concept of free will, particularly because I think of the upbringing that I had, that was Presbyterian, and the way that they see it is that there was, free will in back in Eden, and then after any, at that point, like we're all slaves to sin. So there's that. Honestly, it's kind of like this particular conversation, it kind of like annoys me because it reminds me of like this event, this 3-day thing that I was a part of last year. It was a religious thing for curing yourself, and then it didn't really do anything, for me. But I went there. My parents wanted me to go, and I went, and it was basically nothing. But I will say that we did have conversations about this, and I didn't really like how implacable they were, because I was like, okay, so this is pretty much, like what other people believe in. It's just like, it's wrong, and I was like, oh, okay, you're a nasty person. I hope you die. I know this sounds like an exaggeration, but a lot of like my interactions with people, they end with me hoping that they die, and I don't even have like like a good explanation or like an excuse. It's just that people sometimes are annoying, and they don't listen, and you just want them to stop breathing permanently. I don't know. This might be a little too much. But at the same time, it's also good that I'm admitting this, because it is a feeling that I have a lot, like when people, when they annoy me. Sometimes they don't even annoy me like in a very intense way. It's just like, you're a waste of space, And I know that it's not my place to tell whether people are wastes of space or not. I'm not, like a deity or anything like that. But, it's kind of hard to, not do that sometimes with people. Anyways, I feel relieved that I shared this, because I think this is something that I was like secretly ashamed of. And like right now I can do a better job at being less annoyed that this person is still out there existing. I don't know, I mean, she might have died, who knows, but I don't care. I don't want to care. I don't want to like plot people's death. that's not good. It's not a sign of me being healed and healthy. But yeah. So Sagittarians are scared of surrendering their freedom and being at the mercy of another person. They're afraid of being vulnerable and trusting. This is why Sagittarians are always on the move. They need new horizons. Sagittarians feel like they... Oh, did I read this already? Sagittarians feel that they need to be swimming on the river rather than resting on the shore. Yeah, I've already read this, I forgot. But I will say that this for me just reads as, a person with trauma of some sort. I mean, that's true, there are different types of trauma, but, trauma that came from, like, you interacting with people and them forcing themselves on you in some way or another, like, you are kind of get afraid of being vulnerable and trusting. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you realize that it's a problem that you have to fix. So Sagittarius in friendship. Are Sagittarians loyal? Loyalty is a concept that is built on the principle of consistency. Sagittarians are loyal, but not always to the people they claim to love. They are loyal to the idea of love, loyal to the idea of freedom, loyal to the idea of building a better world. They may love you, but they love the idea of you more. And if you begin to hold them back and restrain them to think like everybody else, they will start to resent you for it. I do relate to this in a certain way. I feel like, as I already mentioned this, but like the idea of a person, the idea of an institution, like those things, they get a much bigger response, at least, from me, than necessarily like the real things. Why, like, whenever you see the real deal, there is a shock, like there is this kind of like disconnect, because you feel like that you're not only losing that thing, whatever service that thing provided for you. For example, if you really believe in an institution, like they may kind of like offer you help one way or another. So when you kind of like you see something, for example, a scandal of corruption regarding in that institution, it feels like there's a breach of trust. But also, like you're losing, because if that was, for example, a safe space for you, you no longer have that safe space, which means that you have to find it somewhere else. Particularly if you haven't really, been trained to kind of like find this, or you haven't, in therapy. Because I feel like, these days, like my sense of my safe spaces, they're, for example, my writing. I don't know, like it can be comforting. Usually, like, when it comes to like TV shows, movies, games, books, like I usually like, like them, only after they're kind of like completed, because, things, but even then, like, it's kind of hard because, like, it involves people, and people can be tricky. People can, like, be very, like, people can kind of fuck you up. And I don't have anything else to add, but I do like this notion that loyalty is a concept that's built on the principle of consistency, and I have historically not necessarily been the most consistent person. I'm trying to do better, and for me, like, what I have right now is working. What I have right now is kind of what I have. I think that this story of like the woman, the thing that bothers me from it is not just like the things that she said, because that was one of like the many points, and it's kind of interesting because, like, why did I feel so kind of like attached to, like, that version of Christianity that I was brought up into, like that, and not easily, but it was because there was a certain point where they were kind of like doing like those prayers, where they kind of like push you. They would say that they don't push you, but that is kind of like the case. And I it was kind of like that, and I was very, I don't know, I ended up just being like, okay, pray for me, but I didn't believe that anything was going to happen. Nothing really changed, but I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm not gonna say that don't, like that I don't want you to pray for me. But yeah, the point is that, like, and then there was like this questionnaire after that, and I ended up feeling like I couldn't give it like a bad grade, so I gave it like a passing grade, and I'm like, okay, that's less than everybody else. That is less than everybody else is putting here. But I don't know. But I did write down, like on the paper, that the woman did not understand the concept of free will, and also predestination. That was the other one, and I don't know why, but like this woman, she annoys me to no end. Like I think about her all the time, and I kind of like, I don't know, something so mild, and a part of me just wants, let me just grab you by the hair and just like poof, against the wall. There's definitely something else here. I know, I can tell that, like there are some other, forces at work here. I don't know why. Also, like, why did this come to mind? There's also a reason, like this is something because I feel like sometimes my fantasies, they're kind of like me projecting these things. So I need to find the things that annoy me and find out why they annoy me the way they do. I think that it is the whole supercilious attitude that still reminds me of religion, because I grew up in a religious context, and there was a lot of like supercilious people feeling really like believing that they knew the answer to all of like the hardest questions in this world, and they were not. They were not. But that is kind of okay. I don't. Man, like I don't know. But for some reason, this woman came back to mind, and this means something. This means that there is something for me to work on. But yeah, so I think it is the supercilious nature of this woman, the supercilious, not only like her unfounded confidence, because that is pretty much like whenever anybody of like any religion or any belief system, astrology as well. Like if anybody is like kind of like acts like they know the answer, for me it's just like, no, you fucking don't. Like, why do you believe this thing that makes no sense? Why? And you want me, and you want to, you're trying to make me feel crazy because, the way that I kind of like see things. Because that is the thing. Like, there is nothing, there's nothing. Like, I'm not claiming that I know all the answers. I'm not claiming that I know what is going to happen. I mean, I do know what's going to happen, but like, that is a whole different conversation that you can have. And oh man, like it's just kind of like annoying. It's just annoying when people they try to push onto you their bullshit. Like if you believe that, then you deal with it. It's not my problem. And people, they're kind of constantly trying to make it our problem. And okay, like I got that out of my system. There's probably more because I'm still thinking about this woman, although like my thoughts are now a little bit more placate. So we can move on. But loyalty. This also kind of like I found interesting. Loyal to the idea of building a better world, because whenever I'm thinking about my morals and my principles, sometimes like what they are in theory and what they are in practice is like very different. I still think when I'm in practice that what I think is right, but it's just that sometimes like you make mistakes, and sometimes like you make concessions. Yeah, not so much mistake as much as a concession. So you can kind of like, I think that I believe I have a responsibility to kind of like make the world a better place in whatever way we're talking about, and sometimes I don't take those opportunities. Sometimes I just walk away, I look back and I just pretend that I'm not seeing that. And so yeah, so I do think that I'm wrong in that way, and that there is more that I should be doing more, basically. That is just sums up a lot of like the difference between me theory and practice. I should be doing more, and sometimes I prioritize myself, but sometimes I feel like I've already gotten used to not interfering, and not so yeah, so I'm judging myself for it. But I don't know, maybe that's why the woman was annoying me so much, because she is going about the situation in all the wrong ways, but she is trying to like make the world better according to what she believes in. And what exactly am I doing? I'm just getting into this place, and I'm not doing anything. I mean, I was pretty honest about what I believe in, or rather what I don't believe in, but I didn't have there were not only one but like two skeptics who apparently were atheists before. And it's kind of like crazy, because this is kind of like how my parents kind of like introduced me, like if you're in a religious situation. They don't really say that I'm an atheist. They say she's no, and she doesn't believe in that, even though she doesn't believe in that. We do, and that doesn't bother me. I actually appreciate that they're not trying to erase like what I don't believe in, instead of some people who are kind of like in denial about their children. But it's interesting because it does spark a conversation, and I've had so many of these conversations of people trying to kind of like prove to me that certain things exist, and it never really, I'm gonna be honest, like it's not gonna work. I talked about this before with other many people, that like for me to believe in, I have to kind of like experience something. And I bipolar, as I said. I have had auditory visual hallucinations before, from when I was, going very deep into an episode. So it was one of those things that I'm like, okay, how am I going to believe anything that I'm thinking? It could just be. It's not uncommon for example, when you're manic, for people to have a sort of like, they think that they're hearing things from God and or not. So it's, I know, I feel like I'm in this, there's this paradoxical thing in which I would need to kind of like see something, but then how exactly could I believe that? Because like I've been fooled before, been fooled by my own brain. So anyways, I love the idea of freedom. This is an interesting thing because it's kind of like you there's, as they put in this, there's the difference between loving freedom and loving the idea of freedom, because sometimes you need some structure. Some people say that you need some guidance, so you love just being able to do whatever you want. But I will say that, at least for me personally, I've always found that I've been able to kind of like sort myself out, without external help. I mean, so therapy counts. So yeah, with external help, but I also know with the help of my parents, I brought up issues to them, and we talked about it. But it is one of those things that sometimes, like, you have to test the waters, or maybe you don't have to test the waters. But for me, I always want to. So when it comes to freedom, whenever I have like a new situation, I come across I'm noticing that like my skin and this dress, they're basically the same color right now. Okay, not so much, but like my face, I was just looking, I was like, okay, there's nothing there. But you have to kind of like test the waters, the waters, because if you don't, you're going to be, I don't know, like you're going to always wonder what it was, if you didn't, what it was like if you did do that thing. So I do think you have to test the waters, but you have to be careful not to kind of like like swim too deep, to the point that you can come back from like that. And I think that I've been able to kind of like walk, to kind of like walk the line in a way that it wasn't really, I wasn't swimming either way. I was able to kind of like dip my toes, like on the pond. I'm actually more than that. I've been able to do a little dive, and I just walk around and move around, and then I kind of like remove myself. This is one of those things that I was talking about, how I wished I had more experience. Like, this is one of those situations I wish I had dived deeper into like those ponds. I was still very contained, but like right now I'm at a point where I'm just glad that mistakes were made, but like the consequences were not permanent. That is more than like a lot of people, which I think is something interesting she said about nature versus nurture, because my nature, I am bipolar, but I think the way that I was brought up, because I have people who are supporting me, I'm having like mental health professionals, my therapist, psychoanalyst, my general physician, my psychiatrist, like my therapist, like both the ones that I have, like, it's a lot of people who help me basically, and I'm very grateful for them, because of them I feel like basically I wanted for the longest time to be, because I'm a very tame person, all things considered, and that is something that I didn't like about myself. I wanted to be more experienced, I want to be more worldly, and there were several reasons why. Some of it has to do with me kind of like creating this version of myself to deal with my trauma, and sometimes it is just kind of like a way for me to break free from the environment in which I grew up in. You kind of like want to make a big gesture, make a stance basically, and that is oh my god, am I talking too loudly? I really hope that people downstairs can hear me. Okay, I'm speaking the language that is not one of the reasons why I think I started like this channel in English, trying to like improve my speaking skills, and also to make sure that nobody could kind of like understand what I was saying. But yeah, so the idea, I feel like the idea of being loyal to the idea of love is an interesting one, because I feel like whenever I'm thinking about the possibilities, that is kind of what I'm doing as well. It's me being loyal to the idea of love. Would I really want to put in the effort to make it happen? Who knows? Okay, so who is the enemy of Sagittarians? The Sagittarian enemy is a structure or anything that attempts to constrict their growth. Sagittarius never want to slow down and really hate sitting still. Their enemy is anyone who tries to hold them back. The enemy is anyone who wants to tie them down and put them in a box. I will say that, you know, structure is something that I both like and I dislike. I think that you can, because this is, you know, an interesting one for me, because since I have been a kid, you know, since I was a kid, I was very, you know, I loved, you know, whenever we had something. I mean, I think it's because I had a very rigid structure, what I had to do, which was good for me because I was struggling because of my ADHD. I was kind of like struggling with getting things done. So, you know, like there was a very, so yeah, so I was, so whenever there was a break in the structure, I really liked it. You know, like, yeah, I was always like dreaming about this breaks in structure. So for example, I was going to my whatever class, you know, after school, and you know, what if my mom, she, you know, came here and she, you know, she, I don't know, she kind of like picked me up and we would go bowling, for example. These things never really happened, but you know, like there, it would happen like once a year. So not the bowling specifically, but you know, like there's like this one time that gets you going for the rest of the year. And so on one hand, so on one hand, like structure helped me, you know, do well in school, helped me kind of like do all the activities, all the things I had to do. But at the same time, like, you know, I was kind of like craving, you know, change sometimes. And I do think that it's something I've been thinking about lately, is this energy thing. Because the past few years, I always have a situation where I get kind of like, you know, more tired, more, you know, whatever. And this, so yeah, I have this, you know, situations, and they are, because I feel like when I'm tired, it's pretty much where I crave, you know, change the most. So for example, I have my schedule. So when I'm tired, I don't want to do any of the things there. I just want to lay down and rest. So in a way, but I still like, you know, for example, let's just go out. You know, today, you know, I went grocery shopping with my parents. That was kind of like the same vibe. And I don't know, man, like it's one of those things that I think it depending, I like structure, but I also I don't like structure, but also I can cope with structure. I think that is as good as it gets. You know, I can have structure and I'll follow it. So the last paragraph. Sagittarian enemies are also the people who try to give them advice. Sagittarians are sure they don't need to be told what to do because they know everything they need to know. The truth is that Sagittarians could learn a lot from other people, but their pride won't let them. I would say that I relate to this, you know, to some extent. I wouldn't say that that is me 100%, but you know, like there is some of it that is definitely me. I want to know. Well, these days, I actually appreciate help. You know, I appreciate people telling me, you know, not what to do, but like what they would do in my place or what they think that I should do. I think that's one of those things that before I wanted to be more like on an I'm asking you basis, you know, like so you tell me. But like right now, if you kind of like offer me unsolicited advice, I'm kind of like, yeah, you know, I will listen to it, and if it's good, I will pay attention. I will do something about it. But you know, I don't know if you see me. Actually, yes, I have been asking for advice. So I think this is also something that is happening with me being an adult. You know, I can now ask for advice. But yeah, so I'm gonna wrap this up. You know, right now, I finished reading, you know, Sagittarius. So the next one I think I'm gonna read is Capricorn, because my Venus and my Mars, you know, like they're both Capricorn, and also the third and fourth houses, they are Capricorn. So I don't really know what that, yeah, I have to look this up. I don't know what that means, but there is like a lot more. In the end, I'll probably end up reading everything. But yeah, so this video, I didn't even read that much, but it's pretty much what I said. Like this gets me thinking, and I'll be thinking more about, you know, like the woman in the Cure, you know, healing event. They were supposed to, yeah, like she's upsetting me. I don't know why. Like I need to. It's been months, you know. Why do I give a fuck, you know? So I'm gonna be looking into that. So, anyways, bye.